Hey, what's happening today, Push Kids? We're back for our next to last lecture in period 3. We're going to be covering topic 3.11 today, developing an American identity. Our learning objective for today is 3M, explain the continuities and changes in American culture from 1754 to 1800. And we have two short key ideas for you today. Our first one states new forms of national culture developed in the United States alongside continued regional variations. So to understand that, we want to look at how a new national culture is going to start to emerge that was based on the ideals of the revolution. However, we do see differences between North and South. So for instance, in the South, slavery continued to spread as tobacco plantations will continue to move west as they eat up the soil. We're going to see slavery continue to spread to the west. Now, we don't have cotton yet. Cotton's not a really big staple crop at this point. It's about to be, but not quite yet. However, in the North, we're going to see a national culture that's much different in the North. Many northern states began to ban slavery in the North. So, for instance, we've got Pennsylvania is going to pass laws that are going to start to gradually emancipate all slaves. We see that happen in New York as well. Massachusetts banned slavery. And so we really start to see this major difference between northern states becoming free states and southern states starting to really kind of hold on and in fact expand slavery. So this idea of national culture is expanding, but it's the major regional differences between the two areas. Leading us to key idea number 2. So key idea number 2, the ideas of national identity, increasingly found expression in works of art, literature, and architecture, though I do have to say many of them are still heavily influenced by European ideals as well. We'll kind of see that here in just a second. So really when we start to look at kind of the ideals of the nation are how the heroes basically are portrayed. And so we see many of the paintings of the era are going to highlight famous people and scenes from the Revolutionary era. Now, probably the most famous painter is Gilbert Stuart. He was the most famous portrait maker of the time. Most of the founding fathers' portraits were painted by him. But there are also several others that became very famous, including Benjamin West. It was a very famous painter. The particular one that you see here is from the end of the French and Indian War. And John Trumbull is another very famous painter of this particular era. In fact, John Trumbull's paintings depict the American Revolution. They're huge paintings. If you ever get a chance to go to Washington, D.C., the Trumbull paintings are inside the Capitol building. They're huge. They're massive. They're incredibly famous. We've got the Battle of Bunker Hill that we see right here, the signing of the Declaration of Independence right here, and then the surrender at Yorktown and this one, all very, very famous Trumbull paintings that help to highlight the ideals of the Revolution, the ideals of heroism, George Washington, individuality, things like that. But culture also started to take expression in other ways during this particular time period as well, besides just major pieces of art highlighting the Revolution. For instance, we've got people such as Phyllis Wheatley, who is an African-American poet who became very famous at this time. As well as Philip Freneau, who also became a famous American writer during this particular time as well. Though much of American literature is still very, very much influenced by Europeans, and Americans are still, for the most part, reading European literature at this point. It really won't be entirely until the early 1800s that we see really truly American style of writing really come about. And even American architecture at this time is heavily influenced by the Europeans as well. This is probably one of the most famous houses from the colonial era and from this particular time period. This is Jefferson's house of Monticello. And it is a classic example of how an American style is going to take on many of the different European styles. So for instance, in his house in the front, you see for instance, you see things such as the dome over the front is a European, almost an Italian type dome, and then you see the Roman and Greek archways kind of in the front. So he takes a bunch of different European styles, mashes it together, and that's really what we find in a lot of the American styles that start to be developed architecturally at this time. But once again, big ideas that we're looking at today as we're thinking about what's happening is we see that American culture will have the continuities, that we are still heavily influenced by European influences. So we're still very much influenced in our art and our architecture and in our literature by Europeans. But we start to change. We start to develop our own styles. We start to develop regional cultures of northern and southern culture. And we start to have our own kind of flavorings as we take these different European styles and it starts to become our own. We're going to see that really become our own in our next time period, period 4. Well, that's all we have for today on culture during the late colonial period and the early American epic era. Until next time, go Pack.